So, I am still looking for challengers to my 40 card deck challenge, where we pick some parameters, maybe things only printed in 1993, maybe we throw in antiquity, something like that. If we want to broaden the scope a little, welcome Founder, welcome Void, glad to see you both stopped by. But yeah, I'm looking for someone who's willing to challenge me. Not necessarily tonight, could be tonight if someone's really ambitious.
Could try and teach Thomas how to play.
Could. That could be interesting. I don't think that'll be tonight though. But looking for someone to do my binder challenge. So they go through my binder, pick out whatever they want from the chosen sets, build themselves a 40 card deck. Then I will build a deck in response with whatever's left over. And my binder's a little skinny in that department, so might be tough pickings. And then we'll play. We tried this once about a month ago. I'd like to try it again, but I need somebody who's willing to step up and take the challenge. So
if somebody really wants a challenge, you could build your deck first, and then they could.
If they really want to, we could try it that way. But to be honest, my binder's so skinny that I think that having first pick is a bigger advantage than building to whatever the other person does.
And also, if you do have...
But that's just my opinion. I could be wrong.
You need to be patient. In any case, and not go in for the kill when you think you have it, because otherwise you would have won.
Yeah. In any case, today I want to talk a little bit about old school combos, and there are lots of them. Here's one of my favorite old cards. You could do a lot with this. Very effective. Some people say it's not very fun, but it's very effective. That was a key part in the first deck that I ever won a tournament with. So, then there's cards like this one here. Now, when you talk about combos, there's a fine line between combos and synergy. If cards just have a lot of synergy and work well together, well, that's great. And they can complement each other wonderfully. That's not necessarily a combo. Old combos didn't always make immediate sense. Sometimes they made logical sense, but they didn't work with the rules of the game. And they caused a lot of headaches as people tried to iron out what did work and what didn't work with the rules. So, here's a little case in point. One of the first combos that I used to come across with friends at school back when I was in high school, but some of the people I played with were still in grade school. You know, it was one of those transitionary periods. My brother played. He was a few years younger than me. Was this little doozy. Who remembers this card? Animate Dead. Very popular, very fun, very flavorful. Enchant dead creature. Troublesome in terms of rules. This used to be a common combo with Lord of the Pit. Now, back in the day, a 7/7 flying trample creature was a huge threat. Not many creatures could rival that. Your Shivan Dragon could maybe take it down. Not much else. And it would still deal some damage over top in the meantime. Hi, Colton. Thanks for coming. Have a big day. Excellent. You too. So, one of the ways that people used to try and trick this out.
Hello.
And I'm not saying it was valid, but people used to try. Was they'd get their opening hand, they would draw a card. Oh, look, I'm not going to play anything. I'm just going to discard my Lord of the Pit. Then in another turn or two, swamp Dark Ritual, or just play a swamp or two. And then I'll animate dead this Lord of the Pit. Comes into play. Yeah, it's got one less power. It's only a 6/7 flying trample on turn 2 or 3. That was very, very powerful move. And maybe you had Swords to Plowshares or a Disenchant. Your Terror isn't going to do anything to it.
Don't have a good day. Have a great day.
Oh, excellent. That works too.
Have a great day.
And the argument was, well, you still have to pay the upkeep, so it's going to eat itself or deal you damage or something like that. Or Lord of the Pit may not be sacrificed to itself, right? So it's just going to start hitting you for 7. Does Magic the Gathering still make and sell cards? They sure do.
What's the current set? Is it Duskmourn or is there another one?
The most recent set
oh, no, it's Foundations.
was Foundations. They came out with a new base set type thing. So, hey. So, yeah. The argument was, you animate dead your Lord of the Pit like this, and you don't have to pay the upkeep because you don't pay upkeep for dead creatures. Once it's dead, it's in your graveyard. You're not paying any upkeeps for them. So, bringing it back with animate dead is a way around the upkeep and makes it cheaper. Isn't that wonderful? Well,
welcome, Zaki or Zakai?
It doesn't work, but it caused a lot of headaches. And part of the fallout of these headaches was when they reprinted it. Here's a 5th edition. This was from Revised. Instead of making it a...
How was your day? Our day was good. Thanks.
Enchant dead creature. They just made it an enchantment. When animate dead... when you play Animate Dead, choose target creature card in any graveyard. When Animate Dead comes into play, put that creature into play, and Animate Dead becomes a creature enchantment that targets the creature. And the enchanted creature gets -1, -0 if Animate Dead leaves play by the creature. So that was an attempt to streamline it, but it's very clunky because, oh look, I play it as an enchantment, then it brings the creature back and attaches itself and becomes a creature enchantment. It didn't stay that way long, I don't believe. I think there was an intermediate stage where they just made it an enchant creature, but then enchant creatures can't target things in the graveyard typically. So, yeah, it was one that they caused all kinds of rules headaches, and it took them a while to straighten that out. But this was a combo that lots of people I remember trying doesn't actually work. Now, that's a combo because it does something really out there, really powerful. They don't always have to be powerful combos, but you're getting an effect that's beyond what you would normally expect from the cards. A synergy would be something like Lord of the Pit with Breeding Pit. Breeding Pit from Fallen Empires, rather, was one of the first token creature generators. The earlier ones had been the Hive, which you had to pay 5 to generate a token, or Serpent Generator from Legends, which you had to pay 4 to make your token creature. Breeding Pit was much more efficient. It was in the same color, and it only cost 2 to make your token each turn. So that was a lot better, and turned in upkeep. Nowadays there's creature tokens all over the place in Magic the Gathering. So an upkeep like sacrifice a creature each turn isn't nearly as bad sounding as it was back then when you had to physically play each creature most of the time. But yeah, that's a synergy using Breeding Pit with Lord of the Pit. Combine it with something like this, even though it's a false combo. It was one that was argued heavily, and that becomes a combo. All right, understood? Simple? Not so simple? Yeah, doesn't really matter. It is what it is. Other cards, which I would say arguably are more synergy than combo, were things like Berserk. You could Berserk something, Berserk it again, whether you had multiple copies of Berserk or whether you had Fork, or whether you started off with a Giant Growth and then Berserked it. That's how the card is meant to work. It's strong, but there's nothing particularly combo-y about that. Forking a Berserk and, getting the effect again. They thought it was too strong for a while, which is why they restricted Berserk and they restricted Fork for a time, and, tried to cut back on how easy it was to get your effect multiple times. But that is how it was designed to work. That I don't see that as a combo. I see that as a synergy.
I don't know who Lewis is talking about.
I never thought I would find Nick Offerman on YouTube. I don't know either. Do we have the usual chat parameters on?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of
Oh, how did this get in here? Another combo deck that people used to talk about was the good old Armageddon decks.
Founder's here. Say hi.
Hey, Founder. Glad to see you.
Hey, Founder.
And I would say, again, that's mostly a synergy. Mostly. Because, first of all, they just work so well together. You drop a big creature that's above curve on the board, and then you wipe out the lands and try and keep that lead. The only part where that almost gets to be a combo is that it has the added side effect of eliminating the downside of your Earn-Handed Djinn. Because all of a sudden, giving your opponent's creature Forest Walk doesn't really matter if there's no forest on the board. In fact, just as a side note, Armageddon was a lot more brutal back in the early days of Magic than it became later on. More creatures had upkeeps. And when all your land disappeared, the creatures tended to disappear, if that was the case. I even made a little chart in my spare time here.
Oh, the dog. I gotta go.
Creatures from Alpha that Armageddon would just outright kill. Things like Nightmare, Gaia's Liege, Sea Serpent, Pirate Ship, enchantments like Stasis, Phantasmal Forces, another creature with an upkeep. You drop an Armageddon, all those just die and go away. And some of those were decent threats. Other creatures like Force of Nature, all of a sudden would start beating your opponent up for you. Very strong. Demonic Hordes would start eating your opponent's lands instead of yours. Would turn the tables right on that. Lord of the Pit, all of a sudden if you can't cast more creatures or pay a lot for the hive tokens or whatever you're using to feed it, it gets a lot more brutal for you. Then there's other things that it just cripples. Creatures like Frozen Shade that have a pump ability or any fire-breathing ability. A Rock Hydra, the Hive, Clockwork Beast, Sedge Troll, anything with Regenerate either. All of a sudden they can't regenerate if you don't have the mana. Now maybe you had a Mox or two and you could mitigate that a little, but generally speaking, this card used to be a lot stronger. But anyway, that's getting more and more into synergy category, and those were just a few I had here to talk about to warm up.
I don't think we have any of our regular people in chat tonight except for Founder.
Well, it's a busy time of year. Yeah. And I hope people are enjoying whatever they're doing.
Yeah, no, it's totally understandable considering it's holiday time. It's just...
Yeah. Now, deck construction rules used to be pretty weird. And again, 40-card decks, at first there wasn't even a limit on the number of each type of card you could play. So you could play a deck with 10 Swamps, maybe a couple Dark Rituals, and then just all the rest Plague Rats. And you could have a massive Plague Rat Swarm deck. Well, that might be interesting and fun to try once or twice, but it can wear thin in a hurry. And combo decks particularly benefited from this because...
What do you find funny, buddy?
They could just go nuts if you could play just your combo cards and drop them very early. One of the first and most famous is the good old, what they call Channel Fireball combo. And that would be something like you drop a mountain, you drop a Lotus. Boink. Lotus goes for some green mana. You use 2 of your green mana to cast Channel. Channel lets you trade life points for colorless mana. So, 19 of your life points, you can whisk away, get some 19 colorless mana. You still have a green left over from your Lotus. You got your mountain you dropped. So you got red plus 19 plus a green. You could drop a fireball or a disintegrate, something like that, right to your opponent's face, wipe them right out.
You want a hot chocolate? Sure.
People didn't like that much, so Channel got restricted and then banned, I think, outright. Black Lotus got restricted. They left the X spells because they didn't see those were the primary culprit in this, and there were more of them. I'm glad you're still here, Colton. So that's one example of an early combo from just Alpha. There were others. Here's a card that was made just to tempt people into trying to find ways to break it. Good old Time Vault. Now, there's lots of ways to break this thing now, and there have been for a long time. Voltaic Key, very efficient one. I've heard of other artifacts that are even more so. Best live stream ever. Well, I hope you're enjoying it. Tezzeret the Seeker was another one that came out. That's much more modern. That was all the weapon shards of Alara, and definitely new card frame. Definitely not old school, I wouldn't say. But Tezzeret has the lovely, lovely effect of being synergistic with this card and a combo. Synergistic in that you can use one of his abilities to tutor up this, and then a different one of his abilities to break this to pieces, because you just use it, untap it, and get your extra turn each turn. But these types of things weren't available back when this card was first around. If you wanted to make use of this to get infinite turns, or basically a new turn every turn, making it one of the first infinite combos available, if you consider that infinite in that sense, you had to first find other ways to untap it. Eventually, they even put kibosh on those by trying to change the rules to make it work with counters. More and more counter manipulation came out, so they just gave up. They said, just play it as written. You just have to tap and untap it. Find other ways to untap it. So the original way was animate artifact. This is clunky, and very vulnerable. You're already dealing with an artifact. Now you're dealing with an enchantment. You gotta enchant your artifact. This makes it into 2/2 artifact creature. So now it's an artifact, an enchantment, and a creature. 3 different creature types. You can kill it with any one of them. And you're still not done your combo, because now it's a creature that doesn't like to untap. You need to find another way to untap it. The most common way to do that was then to enchant it again with something like an Instill Energy. Instill Energy is a wonderful little green card. They've made a couple of similar ones since, but not many, which just lets you untap it an extra time per turn. So, oh look, I untap and I take another turn. And then on that turn, oh good, I get to untap and take another turn. Instill Energy busts this wide open. It forces you into blue-green, but it's such a strong combo. It is complicated, but that can work and could be done and was done. Now, what's less obvious, but also technically an option, as I understand it, is you take your 2/2 creature that taps for an extra turn, but you usually have to give up a turn to untap. That's the normal way Time Vault is expected to work. You could paralyze it. Paralyze is quite an interesting little card. I used to love the art on this card. There aren't many centaurs in the game, but all of a sudden this little black creature control card, look, there's a centaur. Target creature is not, I'm going to read this right way around, is not untapped as normal during its untap phase unless 4 mana is spent. Tap target creature when paralyzed is cast. So it's a 1 black enchantment for a creature. You put it on the creature taps, and you got to pay extra to untap it. As it's written here, it's not obvious that it would work as the combo piece. However, this writing was fuzzy and was cleared up from revised onward. On a revised copy, it shows how it still taps the creature when it comes into play. You still have to pay extra to untap it. But the timing is different. And it's cleared up, whereas this just says it's not untapped as normal during your untap phase unless 4 mana is spent. Well, during your untap phase, usually there's not a whole lot of things you can respond to and do. So they switched it up and cleared it up so that it's at the start of your upkeep phase, which comes after your usual untap phase. You pay 4 to untap the creature, basically. So, when you've got your animated Time Vault now paralyzed, you're going to have to spend some mana to get it untapped, but it'll untap it just as much as Instill Energy will. You just got to do it at the start of your upkeep. So now you got your tapped Time Vault, comes into play tapped. It's a 2/2 creature. It's been paralyzed. It wasn't going to untap anyway. But now, during the start of your upkeep, you can pay 4 to untap it. Oh, look. Now I'll tap it and take an extra turn after this one. And you can rinse and repeat as long as you got the 4 mana to untap it each turn. So there's another way. Either Instill Energy or Paralyze will complete this combo for you within Alpha, Beta, Unlimited. 1993 cards. You could combo off. There's another one besides the good old Channel Fireball. There were many others. Good old Stasis again. You need to play a blue each upkeep. Take that Instill Energy, put it on a Birds of Paradise. Birds of Paradise can tap for any color, can tap for blue. You can untap it each turn. You can pay for your Stasis indefinitely. All of a sudden, the limitation, this has basically a built-in cumulative upkeep because your lands aren't untapping ordinarily. The Stasis won't last for, you can't just wait it out anymore. So there was another fun, oldish combo. Here's another. Icy Manipulator can work with all kinds of things. It was infamous for working with Winter Orb, another lockdown combo like Stasis. Just, make sure that you tap the orb before your turn so it doesn't affect you, but it still affects your opponent. Here's another simpler one. This one is less irritating for your opponent, but still quite effective. Howling Mine lets each player draw an extra turn at the start of their turn, but it doesn't work if it's tapped. So you can turn it off by tapping it with your Icy Manipulator, and your opponent doesn't get to draw. And then at the start of your untap phase, it untaps, and then you get to draw. And then at some point, you can lock it back down, and then they don't get to draw their card. Nice, simple little combo. What about the Rack and Black Vice combos? Or do they not work in the way I think? Rack and Black Vice are very strong little cards. They synergize well with Hymn to Torak or Mind Twist, things to empty your opponent's hand, or things to fill your hand if you want to drop a couple Black Vices and then your opponent manages to thin out their hand, then cast Wheel of Fortune, fill their hand up, and maybe drop a Stasis so they can't play things very quickly. They can be very strong, very effective cards, and they were very popular. Black Vice actually got restricted, so you could only play one copy of it because it was just too much if people could drop a couple racks early and then impede you. But, not really. They just amplified the other effects you were doing. Is it a combo? I don't know. I never really thought of them as such, but they're certainly synergized well with discard effects and things. It might venture into combo territory. Where are we? This one is a little bit later, but I remember running this as well with good old Howling Mine. Howling Mine works well with Chains of Mephistopheles and Magrim. Magrim Stronghold, so this came quite a ways down the road, still in the original frame era, but not until 96, was it? 98, even later. Anyway, but every time an opponent discards a card, it's dealt 2 damage. People used to like to run this with Hymn to Torax and racks and stuff, but this comboed a little better because this doesn't work on the first card drawn each turn, but these would add extra cards every turn, and every time they drew an extra card, they would first have to discard a card, which they'd have at least one in their hand because the first card didn't count. So this would force extra discards, and you could drop more Howling Mines.
Okay, Founder, thank you.
To amplify the effect. You could drop more Magrims to amplify it even further. Very nasty little combo with that as well. And it's going to tie into something else a little bit later, as you'll see. Actually, I used to love Chains of Mephistopheles as a counter to the old Tolarian Academy Time Spiral decks, that came out just after Urza's Saga launched. Urza's Saga, very broken with lots of cheap mana artifacts that were available at the time. Tolarian Academy, still restricted to this day in Vintage and banned everywhere else, just because it could generate insane amounts of mana. You could then use Time Spiral to refill your hand, draw more cards, do whatever you wanted until you got enough mana available to just make your opponent deck themselves with a massive stroke of genius or something. Chains of Mephistopheles puts a stop to that in a hurry. And Underworld Dreams can as well, but now I'm getting distracted again. Let's see. Before we get into the craziest combo I've got to show you, here's a couple more simple ones that came out around the time Legends released. Now, Lich had been around since Alpha. Lich is a very unusual card, and people are trying to find ways to abuse it, because it changes up the game rules big time. You lose all life, so your life total becomes 0. You should lose, ordinarily. If you gain life later in the game, instead, draw 1 card from your library for each life point you gain. For each point of damage you suffer, you must destroy one of your cards in play. Sacrifice a permanent. Creatures destroyed this way cannot be regenerated. You lose if this enchantment is destroyed, or if you suffer a point of damage without sending a card to the graveyard. So if you have to sacrifice this, or if it's destroyed, you're at 0 life, you lose. Otherwise, as long as this is on the table, it's keeping you alive, and it changes the effects so that whenever you gain life, you draw cards instead. Works nicely with drain life. Whenever you lose life, you have to sacrifice permanents. Very risky play. But, people would try from time to time. Another card came out. This card, honestly, was almost a combo in itself with the rules, because Mana Burn was around. So during your upkeep, and you didn't check to see if you're dead until the end of a phase, basically. So you could Mana Burn yourself down during your upkeep, and then swap your life total with your opponent once you were at 0 with this for a while. And so Mirror Universe in itself became a game-winning condition just based on the rules of the game at the time. But they changed that. So you had to find another way to get yourself to 0, enter Lich. And this combo was around for a lot longer. Still risky. You still have to have an artifact and an enchantment. Either one could be gotten rid of to stop it. And if the Lich was gotten rid of, you were dead. But
Kids are yelling downstairs.
But that was a combo where you could have 0 life and then swap that 0 with your opponent, and pop, you win the game. I wish they would bring back Mana Burn. So do I. I mean, honestly, there are some cards that just got broken. They don't work anymore since Mana Burn entered the game. Some cards got a lot stronger, like good old Mana Drain. But there are other cards that just don't work. I'm trying to remember what is it Mana Barbs?
I don't know.
Where any land that's left at the end of your turn untapped, you take damage for. Well, if you can just Mana Burn, or not have to worry about Mana Burn, and just tap it to add the mana and nothing happens, who cares? It's useless, basically. There was a few cards like that really getting rid of Mana Burn did a number on. Here's another one that one of my friends used to love to pull on me. Tabernacle of Pendervale and Living Plain. All lands become 1/1 creatures. All creatures have an upkeep of 1.
Thanks,
and hi, Tank. Thanks for showing. That's great. Ooh, excellent.
We really got to get our live stream set early, like way early.
Yeah, that usually helps.
We didn't know how today was going to go, though. We were in the city, so.
So the rules used to work that if you had creatures, you couldn't use them until you paid their upkeep. So your lands are what you would use to pay your 1 mana upkeep of your lands, but you can't until their upkeep is paid. So if you had a Mox or a soul ring or some other artifact that you could tap to get mana to pay for one of your lands. You could then use that land to pay the upkeep of another land, and that land to pay the upkeep of another land. And you could keep your lands alive, but you would use all your mana just keeping them alive, and then you'd have one land left to play things after. Very annoying, but better than not having an artifact to start off the chain. Then all your lands just die, because you can't pay any of their upkeeps. So yeah, this was quite a vicious little combo that one of my friends used to delight in tormenting me with for a long time. Tabernacle of Pendervale and Living Plain. It was indeed. Yes, indeed. Before that, speaking of early combos, sounds counterproductive. Well, it certainly could be, but here's the thing. Once you wiped out your opponent's lands this way, it became your turn. All your lands are 1/1 creatures. All your creatures have an upkeep of 1. This is a land. It's also got the upkeep of 1. If I choose not to pay it, this goes away. And then there goes the upkeep. All my other lands are safe. So it was very harsh on your opponents, but it was easy to get around yourself. Now, I've got this as sort of a stand-in. This came a little bit later, the good old Grim Monolith. The precursor to this Basalt Monolith was around since Alpha. And then in Antiquities, the second expansion ever, they came out with this little
I totally
sucker.
forgot it was Monday, says Tank.
Yeah, well. So Basalt Monolith is an artifact that costs 3, taps for 3 colorless, but you have to pay 3 colorless to untap it. Grim Monolith, they tweaked the numbers a little bit. It costs 2, still taps for 3 colorless, and you have to pay 4 to untap it. So just comparing the two, they're very comparable cards. In some circumstances, I might actually prefer the Basalt Monolith. But they both work amazingly with this little power artifact card. Activation costs of target artifact is reduced by 2. If this would reduce an artifact's activation cost below 1, then the activation's cost becomes 1. Yeah, so you got to pay 4 to untap this. This knocks the cost down by 2. So now you have to pay 2 to untap this, and you can tap it for 3. Use 2 of that 3 to untap it. You're up 1. Tap it for another 3. Use 2 of that to untap it. You can get infinite mana. Same effect, a little bit quicker with Basalt Monolith, which taps for 3. You have to pay 3 to untap it. Well, now you only have to pay 1 to untap it. So you tap it for 3, you use 1 to untap it, you're up 2 mana. Either one of these two, and again, one around since Alpha, the other one came out later. This is an infinite mana combo, very early in the game. And once you have endless colorless mana, you could use a rocket launcher to kill your opponent, which is otherwise a very poor card, honestly. Also from Antiquities, came out at the same time as Power Artifact. Or you could drop a red mana and use a Fireball or a Disintegrate again to finish off an opponent. Lots of things you can do with big mana. If you feel so inclined, you can even monkey around with things like Colossus of Sardia. Why not? Now, all these have been pretty simple 1-2 card combos. Or sorry, 2 or 3 card combos. 1 card combo isn't really a thing. I've never met a card that just combos with itself. They usually try and avoid that in the design phase. But sometimes people just want to stretch things.
Is there any interesting combos with Stuffy Doll?
Oh, I'm sure there's lots. As I recall, Stuffy Doll is an indestructible little 1/1 or 0/1 maybe that sits there, and if it takes damage, it damages your opponent that amount. Works nicely with things like Inferno or What's the new one? Blasphemous Act. 13 damage to all creatures in play. Oh, look. 13 to the stuffy doll. That goes to the opponent. You had a couple of creatures like that around. I have that in my, I think I did anyway, in my Mogmaniac deck, which ran Blasphemous Act. Similar sorts of effects. Creatures that like to bounce the damage around a little bit, sometimes amplify it with a good old Furnace of Wrath, and hit your opponent over the head with it. There's some neat stuff you can do with it. Speaking of bizarre creatures that people like to find abuses for, here's Nicole Bolas, the most famous of the Elder Dragon legends. Very strong effect. A lot of the other ones just had trample or rampage 2 or a castle effect for your creatures, fire breathing effects. These are all decent extra abilities on your 7/7 flyer. But Nicole Bolas has very high potential threshold. It might be useless if your opponent doesn't have a hand, but because of the high potential, it was always a bit of a favorite. Also, being black meant it was immune to terror, which doesn't hurt. Early in the game, a lot of black removal couldn't hit black creatures. It still has that annoying upkeep of 3, a blue, a black, and a red. And it's still way overcosted at 8 for your 7/7 flying. But whenever it deals damage to an opponent, that opponent discards his or her entire hand. Ignore this effect if your opponent doesn't have any cards left in their hand. So you get to empty out your opponent's hand every time this hits somebody. That's nice. Now, how do you do it in the early game? If the sucker costs 8, including 3 different colors, which you need double of. That was problematic for a long time. Again, just like with Lord of the Pit, some intrepid thinking individuals would try, oh, look, let's discard it and animate at it. No, doesn't work. You still have to pay upkeeps. That could still get it out potentially quicker and easier because you don't have to pay the massive 8. So you could wait until maybe turn 4-ish, where you're actually going to have your colors to pay the upkeep next turn and animate it, and then that can work. Oh, let's see. Was it Invasion? I think it was Invasion. They came out with a new little card. This is a newer printing, unfortunately. It's what I could find quickly. Of Sneak Attack. Now this is an interesting card, especially when you look at cards like Nicole Bolas. If you can get this going quickly, you can do some damage with a Nicole Bolas. So Sneak Attack is an enchantment for 4, costs a red and 3, and there are lots of artifact mana or Dark Ritual still around right through. Dark Ritual is still around into Urz's block. So very easy to find to get this out quicker. Pay a red. You may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. That creature gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So let's say you first turn, play your mountain. Second turn, swamp Dark Ritual, play a Sneak Attack. If your opponent doesn't have an answer for it, on turn 3, you could pay your red, drop your Nicole Bolas out of your hand, and swing away with haste first turn, and it would clear out whatever's left in your opponent's hand on turn 3. And then it dies at end of turn. You probably couldn't pay its upkeep anyway at that point. And it's done its job. It got in for 7 damage. And your opponent's remaining, let's say they still had half their cards. Let's say they still had 3 or 4 cards in their hand. They're gone. You lost your 1 and got in some damage. Nice little combo. People are always looking to do better. So, what else was around this time period? Oh, people got creative. The good old Nicole Bolas, the mightiest of the Elder Dragons, the one that became a Planeswalker, the one that tormented the multiverse. people wanted to make a turn 1 combo to kill with it. So what did they come up with? Well, let's take all the most degenerate stuff that's come out in the last several sets and throw it all into one pile and see what we can do, eh? So, this monstrosity of a combo, 7-card combo, no duplicates. You need the exact 7 cards in your opening hand to pull it off.
Thomas, you still up here?
Start by dropping a swamp. Nice and simple.
Can you go tell him to stop screaming?
Tap your swamp. Dark Ritual. Nice, simple card. Both commons. Been around for a while. We're off to an easy start. Would Splinter Twin help by giving you a token with haste, so it would be like a double activation on Nicole Bolas? The double activation on the Nicole Bolas itself is still just your opponent discards the hand. So you could get in some extra damage with that, I imagine, if you had the mana up for it and stuff available. But your opponent discarding their hand, then the second trigger, they have no hand, so there's nothing left to discard. So that part of the effect really isn't taken advantage of. But anyway, Swamp, Dark Ritual, you got 3 black mana. Drop a Lion's Eye Diamond. Then, let's see, what was the next step? Crack your Lion's Eye Diamond for 3 red mana. So you got 3 black and 3 red. Use your 3 black to cast Yawgmoth's Will. Oh, and by the way, you had to discard all your cards in your graveyard at this point. Yawgmoth's Will. Still floating 3 red mana. Okay. Bring back your Lion's Eye Diamond. Get 3 black mana again. So you still got 3 red, 3 black. Oh, look, that Dark Ritual that you played earlier. That's in your graveyard. You can play that too. So your 3 black goes up to 5 black. You still got your 3 red. Use 3 of your black.
Oh, I forgot to take the turkey out.
Yes, we should do that later. Use 3 of your black to play the McGrim. Remember this little gem from the Chains of Mephistopheles combo? Yeah, well, it's still around. At this time, whenever an opponent discards a card, McGrim deals 2 damage to him or her. Now, you've still got 2 black and 3 red. Use your 2 black, 2 red, cast your sneak attack. You still have red left. Activate your sneak attack. Back comes your big fat Nicole Bolas with haste. And you got a McGrim on the board. And it's turn 1, so your opponent still has a hand of 7. Unless they mulliganed under new mulligan rules. I think we were still old mulligan rules at the time, which mean you could only mulligan if you had no land or all land. But generally speaking, your opponent still has 7 cards in the hand. You swing in for 7 damage. Your opponent has to discard their 7 cards. And for each card they discard, they take 2 damage. So they take 14 damage for discarding their 7 cards. 7 from the combat. That's total 21 damage. They're dead. Turn 1, 7 card, crazy combo. Does it work? Or is it just as bad as the old Animate Dead that actually doesn't get around the upkeep? I'm less sure about this one. The big problem comes with the definition interaction between Yawgmoth's Will and Sneak Attack. Because Yawgmoth's Will says until end of turn you may play cards in your graveyard as though they were in your hand. Sneak Attack says you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. So it's in your graveyard, you can play it as though it was in your hand, but you're not playing it when you sneak attack. You're taking a card from your hand to put into play. That's the only snag I see with this combo. You'd need an actual judge or rule expert to clear that up, whether that's legal or not. So, but it's a very creative combo. It uses all kinds of the broken nonsense of the day. Yawgmoth's Will was very popular. Yeah, exactly. It only sees cards in your hand, so ordinarily I would say you can't target the Bolas in your graveyard unless the Yawgmoth's Will, you may play cards in your graveyard as though they were in your hand, would allow that. I don't think it does, but I could see someone making that argument, and I'm sure somebody has. So, but I've seen this combo talked about ad nauseum at times. So it might be just another Dead in the Water combo like Animate Dead of Lord of the Pit, but at least it's very interesting, and it gets you thinking. And I'm sure there's other ways that you could speed up sneaking attacking the Bolas. It's just getting that Magrim in there and getting it on the first turn. That's a whole lot of business to go on turn 1. But, you know, I'm impressed somebody came up with that. Now, another little fun deck that I like to pull out sometimes, just for a hoot and to keep people from getting too overconfident in how they expect games to play, is my little green-black surprise deck. Why is it a surprise deck? Well, it's full of all kinds of goodies. In particular, I've got some pretty simple tutors. I've got a lot of big, nasty creatures. Progenitus, Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre, Emrakul, the Eon's Torn, Grizzlebrand, Spirit of the Night. These are all big nasties. You need a way to trick them out a little quicker and easier. And this deck ran 3 copies of Eureka. And again, it's green-black, so you got Dark Rituals, you got Lanoir Elves, or Finehorn Elves, or whatever. There's lots of ways to speed this up so you can play it quicker than turn 4. And then start dropping these big monsters. Your opponent gets to put whatever is in their hand in play as well. So, I mean, hey, they get to have fun playing whatever they feel like. But I'm expecting this. So I've got bigger stuff to drop. That's generally how this deck plays out. And it's fun, and it's crazy. And some people complain bitterly, but, you know, that's the main plan.
There's a reason why I don't play you very often.
Well, this isn't the deck I use all the time. It's just, you know.
I just say your style.
And you got simpler stuff like Spirit Monger and Pekka Worm, what here? Pelaka Worm. Anyway.
Tank says no.
A little bit basics. Arbor Elf. Ooh, here's an Imperial Archangel. That's a fun card.
Oh, he's responding to Founder. Okay.
Usually when I think of Imperial, I usually think of an Empire.
Well, of course.
We are also not ready. We have gifts. We just not sure what we have. And we definitely don't have anything wrapped.
This deck especially specializes at terrorizing monocolor players. Usually, if you want a safe mana base where you don't have to worry about paying extra life or costs to try and get your colors together to play all your cards, just play one color, play all basic lands, easy. Simple, fairly safe, because most land destruction, well, a lot of land destruction that people play targets non-basic lands, which can be things like dual lands or lands that provide multiple colors in a multicolored deck, or things that give you other annoying effects. Lots of people conclude ways to get rid of those. But a lot of them will not target basic land. So if you want a safe mana base, include lots of basics. Easy to do in a one-color deck. If you're playing 2 colors, you can still run a whole lot of basics and usually get away with it and still be fairly safe. But especially for a one-color deck, this deck is very brutal at dealing with those. Against a 2-color deck, it can still be useful, though. So what it does, if I'm not finding my Eureka, or I've got a couple of other ways to trick creatures into play, is I will try and assemble this combo, where, and again, I can do it fairly quickly with extra elves or dark rituals or things. 1 green, instant, animate land. Target my opponent's mountains, say. Until end of turn, target land is a 3/3 creature that's still a land. Then I eradicate it. This is a rude surprise to a lot of people. Remove target non-black creature. The land is colorless, so it's not black, even if it's a swamp. Remove target non-black creature from the game. Search its controller's graveyard, hand, and library for all copies of that card and remove them from the game. That player then shuffles his or her library. So, your mountain is a 3/3. Your mountain is dead, and I will now go through your deck and take every mountain out and remove them from the game. Oh, and your hand in your graveyard, just in case. Bye-bye all your mountains. And what do you have that you can still use to play cards when that's done? Do you happen to have a mana rock or two around? Did you get them in play before you need mana to cast them? You know, it's a nasty little bugger of a combo. On the right opponent, it really, really locks them out of the rest of the game. So,
I think you pulled something like that on me once.
oh, I might have.
Mm-hmm.
But it's surprise. Every so often, people just, you need to remind them that something as safe as your mana base might not always be there for you. And that is why, whenever I'm building pretty much any of my decks, if I have the choice and the cards available, I like to include, where is a good example? Here's one. A couple snow-covered lands, because the title is different. If I did this to someone's forest and they had some snow-covered forests in their land, in their deck, that's a different card. So maybe I can only remove half their basic lands, or maybe I can only remove 3/4. But if they've got a few of these, they'll at least be still in the game, because they could still have a few to function with. That's one of my reasons I love snow-covered lands. There are others.
The art is beautiful on the snow-covered lands.
A lot of the snow-covered lands, yes, I tend to agree. Honestly, the Ice Age snow-covered forest looks a lot better than the Cold Snap one, in my humble opinion. But I'm not sure I have an Ice Age one in here. More's the pity. Anyway, that's one of my nice little surprise combos. Now I want to go back to this deck. Good old Stasis. Again, this is a combo deck. For a long time, I still had the original. The one that I won the tournament with way back in the day. That was such a key memory for me. I just saved the deck, and I kept it around for a long time. And then eventually I decided it needed an update. There had been so many cards that have come out. I love vintage lands, even as someone who started in 2015. Chronotog? Why? Hey, you are a good guesser. It was a Chronotog Stasis deck. Now, the first Stasis decks I came across were Time Elemental Stasis decks. Time Elemental came out in Legends. Stasis was around in Alpha. So, all you needed for that was 6 mana, and you could cast your Stasis. Your opponent can't untap. Keep your other 4, use your Time Elemental, return it to your hand. You're relying on a creature. You have to have it set up. People will kill that Time Elemental very easily, and you need 6 mana. You're almost better at that point to run Capsize Stasis, just because you're not relying on a creature, you're just casting your instant, but it does take a little bit more mana even than Time Elemental does. And they've made other creatures that can do similar things since then too, that are more efficient. But Stasis, players do not get an untap phase. During your upkeep, pay a blue or destroy Stasis. So, it's got an upkeep of a blue. And things don't untap. So you have to keep paying while you have islands, or find a way to get some more islands into play. keep feeding it under normal circumstances. Chronotog is another creature. You don't need mana. So that simplifies that end of things, at least. You're still going to need to protect this guy. But usually it's the last piece of the combo you drop. So that helps. And it also helps if you can tap your opponent out before you do it. Skip your next turn. Chronotog gets +3/+3 until end of turn. Use this ability only once each turn. But you can use it on your opponent's turn. So once it's your opponent's turn, you skip your turn. Their turn again, you skip your turn. Their turn again, you skip your turn. You'll never have to play for the stasis because you never get a turn, so you never get an upkeep to pay the upkeep. So stasis stays around indefinitely. But how do you win without having any turns? Well, they're under a stasis lock. You just got to find a way to keep that going, make it as permanent as possible, and eventually they'll deck themselves. And that's basically how Chronostasis worked. How do you pull that off? Well, free counter spells were around by Visions, which is when Chronotog came out, thanks to Force of Will. But you also had Kismet. And my original version of this deck was blue with a splash of white for Kismet. Plus I ran, I think, a couple of copies of Disenchant and a couple of Swords to Plowshares just in case. But mainly it was splash for just Kismet for the combo. Kismet costs 4. And as long as it's in play, any lands your opponent, or any permanents your opponent play come into play tapped. So that helps keep them from building up over a number of turns, a few things to play something to get rid of your combo. Yep.
If I were to make a Magic deck, I would probably make a blue one since my favorite color is blue.
Blue is probably a bit of a trickier color to learn. It deals with a lot more interaction, but it certainly has a lot of very powerful cards.
You can do blue in another color.
Yeah, absolutely. You can make a combo of 2 colors or more as an option too.
What colors are available?
Blue, red, green, black, and white are the 5 colors in Magic.
So maybe I could do a blue and white deck.
You probably could. Some people consider brown. My first deck was red-blue.
There's a one before that too.
How well would that work?
My stepfather would play Chronotog plus Stasis when I was a new player. My Thorn and Elemental never got through, LOL. Yeah, that's often how things go, is the experienced players know how to lock things down. And
which is why I didn't stick around to playing much.
Yeah, and why they probably don't make as many ways to lock things down as much as they used to. No more Armageddon, no more Stasis, far less land destruction. Well, I don't think it's really that much of an improvement because they've made a lot of other... Now there's so many ways to have infinite combos and get infinite creature tokens, infinite mana, infinite whatever. I don't think that makes it any more fun. You can have someone just go off and win either way. At least with the lockdowns, it taught people how to include things in their deck to counter savage combos. I think, I suppose people learned to have things to stop some of these infinite combos from going off, but I don't think it's the same. My first deck that I remember building was white-blue, so same thing as Thomas is suggesting, and that was largely due to card constraints. I remember building early on a green, red, black deck as well, just because I happened upon a Visvictus Asmati, the Elder Dragon with fire breathing in all those colors. So I made a Dragon's Lair deck where I would hope to get that out. I think it had a Fire Drake from Chronicles as well, but mainly it was just the one big nasty dragon and a few other things to hope to get there eventually. I might have eventually changed it up a bit and started running more things like Craw Giants and thicket basilisks and lures, and trying to go at things more from that direction. And again, I always liked red, so as a splash color. Good old dual caster mage. And Twin Flame is one of my favorite combos. Okay. Twin Flame. That sounds like something more recent because I don't recognize that from back in the day. But yeah, I mean, I experimented with whatever colors I could get my hands on.
Oh.
The first cards I ever got, was I found in a desk someplace 3 islands and a reconstruction from Revised. And so that was my introduction into the game. Oh, look, you can cast sorceries that retrieve artifacts. You know, I hadn't even been introduced to creatures yet, but those are sort of where I started with understanding. I believe it was Theros block. Yeah, well, that's definitely much more recent. So, there you go. Anyway, so in my modern reconstruction of this deck, I had my Stasises, I had my Chronotogs, but to replace that Kismet, there are now better options that didn't require splashing another color.
Oh, it's
so, Time Spiral block. You had Planar Chaos, was it? I believe. Color shifted cards. So here's a Frozen Aether. That was basically Kismet shifted to blue. Artifacts, creatures, and lands an opponent controls come into play tapped. So that helps lock down your Stasis even further. And basically exact same thing as Kismet, but now blue. So didn't need another color. Also, Betrayers of Kamigawa came out a little bit later on as well, but still around that time. And permanents come into play tapped for a 3 mana artifact. This actually combos much better. It does hinder you in terms of your lands. That's the trade-off. But in terms of casting cost, you can cast an Orb of Dreams on turn 3, and then turn 4, drop both the Stasis and the Chronotog, because you got your 4 mana, in theory. So that one works a little bit more smoothly, whereas with Frozen Aether, you usually had to wait till turn 4. A couple of other little tidbits I threw in here. This could buy me some time if I needed to set up, find more cards. Glacial Chasm, cumulative upkeep, 2 life, but when Glacial Chasm comes into play, sacrifice a land, you cannot attack, all damage dealt to you is reduced to 0. Just throw it out, pay a few life, kill a few turns. If your opponent's getting oppressive with a big creature advantage you can't combat, this can buy me some time and help me draw more cards to set up. Had a Sapphire Medallion to make my blue cards cost 1 less. Again, getting that key turn where I could drop all my combo pieces onto the board at once, or, you know, if I have the Frozen Aether or the Orb of Dreams, just the other 2. Mana Short was fun. All opponents' lands are tapped, and opponent mana pool is emptied. Opponent takes no damage from unspent mana. So that part is now redundant entirely. But I ran a couple of mana shorts just because if my opponent was wary of my combo and didn't want to tap out, wanted to keep up some mana for an answer, blammo. Force him to tap out. Could also do that if he did try and play something with Power Sync. Power Sync's been reprinted in many sets, got lots of different arts to choose from. But yeah, good old Power Sync plays very nicely in this type of deck as well, because it forces your opponent to tap out. I was wondering if you got all
the present
spot.
That was to Founder.
Well, we might.
That was to Founder.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've got a good chunk of them done now, but there might be a few little things to add.
Yeah, for ourselves, yeah.
Yeah. Now, good old Black Vice. Again, back when I first ran this deck, this was a restricted card.
So we got a question from Derek.
I love Mark Poole
No,
art
right here.
for Power Sync.
Above Derek's.
Would it be possible to get that deck list from you? Sounds like a really fun deck.
We could probably post it
The
in the...
Stasis, Chronostasis deck?
We can
Depends
post it-
on your idea of fun. But it's definitely an interesting deck.
We can post
And
it
it's not one that people expect these days.
We'll post in the comments after live's over.
We could. I don't know how easy it is to put a deck list in the format, but
It's fine. You can... Or, we can try. We'll try.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
But yeah,
Or he can email us. !email. And then we can email the list.
could do. Black Vice is an interesting secondary threat if your combo's not working, just because if you can just lock down your opponent long enough with Stasis where they can't play much, their hand tends to increase in size, and then this will slowly pinch them and pinch them and pinch them until they die.
Yeah, Unicorn, that's
It
also
was-
another possibility.
It was, like I said, restricted when I first made my deck list, but since that time, they took it off the restricted list. Go
Well,
figure.
Unicorn recommended a community post. We could do that too.
More and more. We could do that.
Because if more than one person wants the deck list, then
So
that
I
makes
included
sense.
a play set of those. Just go back and check. Comment on the Mark Poole art. That was the Ice Age one I see. So, the original alpha artwork. This is a 4th edition copy, but that was Richard Thomas. Ice Age was the next set release with a new art for Power Sync, and that's the Mark Poole art. And you can see the mountains, the forests, the plains, the swamps, the islands, all spinning in a vortex down the tube. Next, we had Mirage and Charles Gillespie. Mage's Spell going fizzle. And then Power Sync from Tempest with Jeff Miracola. So, I always liked to include a little variety in my decks where I could, and this is a prime example. Anyway.
I was not the best at deck building when I tried.
Also threw in a full play set of good old Vatican Mastermind. And again, this is just a 2-cost, 1/2, pay 1 blue, return target permanent you control to its owner's hand. So, you recall Time Elemental costed 3, was a 0/2 instead of a 1/2, had a nasty downside where if it was, I think it couldn't be enchanted, so you couldn't use Instill Energy on it, but if it was killed, you lost 5 life. And you have to pay 4 and tap it to return a permanent to owner's hand. This can only target permanents I control, which is a downside. But that's what I want to be targeting in this deck anyway. I want to be able to use this to bounce my Stasis and keep it around. So this guy costs 2, and it only cost me 1 to bounce it. So whereas I needed 6 mana to get Time Elemental Stasis going, Vatican Masterminded Stasis only takes 3 mana. Much more manageable. So that's why I threw in a play set of those. And again, it gives my opponent something else to worry about. I can assemble my combo in alternate ways. Community post is another possibility.
That
Okay,
was old comment.
Then we've got, and again, there were multiple arts for this one. I just like the original Legends art so much, even though I didn't have any original Legends copies at the time I first built the deck. I did have 1 by the time I did rebuild this. Unfortunately, I wanted it for my Classics binder, so I replaced it with good old black bordered Italian Legends Boomerang. But I still have my Chronicles ones here too. Good old Boomerang, very, again, you can use it with the Stasis. But return target permanent to owner's hand is just generally useful ability. You can use it on one of your opponent's lands. You can use it on one of your opponent's creatures. Whatever you need to slow them up if that's what's causing problem. If they've got one land left open where the Swords to Plowshare is ready to go to kill your Chronotog and you don't have a counterspell for it,
Oh my goodness.
there you go. You can boomerang their land and they don't have the option. I mean, I suppose they could float the mana, which could be annoying, but
No.
there's always ways to play around things to a certain extent, but it does give you quite a bit of options, and that's why I always like to have a play set of those included as well. And then a couple of Echoing Truth. This is a little bit more narrow, still costs 2. Yes, everything has been purchased. Okay, they were responding there. Echoing Truth, back from Darksteel, or
Sorry.
yeah, I think it was Darksteel. The second set of the Mirrodin block.
Wow, that's awesome, Founder.
Return target non-land permanent and all other permanents with the same name as that permanent to their owner's hand. This is a catch-all when people play those annoying token decks.
One more. Wow.
So if
Way to
you've got a pile of tokens, your opponent's got goblin tokens coming out everywhere, poof, or sliver tokens, or whatever tokens, they just all disappear in a flash because they can't go back to your opponent's hand.
Okay.
And they just die, basically. So I put 2 of these in there, and again, I can use it just like a boomerang in a lot of other cases too. I do like to have some free counter spells available, just in case my opponent, since I first made this deck, there have been ways to play things for free without the need of mana. So whether it was, I'll throw 2 contagion tokens on your Chronotog, as soon as the turn ends and it loses its +3/+3, it's dead. Or Fire Blast, sacrifice 2 mountains to cast it. Or Pyrokinesis. Those you can play around a little bit more because you can give the +3/+3 boost to save it potentially, but if they've got a second one, or if they get their timing just right, as in response to what you're doing, it's possible for them to get around that. So they can be annoying too. But Contagion was usually a little bit more straightforward. So I included a couple of free counter spells, things like Daze, or obviously Force of Will, but my Force of Will's got occupied in another deck, so they're not actually in this stack right now, but they would be in here. And again, sometimes Daze, and here's another one that's handy, sometimes Thwart. Thwart is just a hard counter, not like Daze, where it just forces them to spend an extra 1. Ordinarily costs 4, but you may return 3 islands you control to their owner's hand instead of paying Thwart's mana cost. So there you go again. Presto, I can bounce some of my locked up islands to my hand instead of paying its casting cost, and I get a free counter. I suppose I could throw in a Mindbreak Trap or something like that. There's ways to place some other free counter spells. There's lots of them out there now. But honestly, I found, include a Thwart or 2, maybe a Daze or 2, Force of Wills if you got them. Those are all solid options to help keep things alive. Brainstorm, very handy for finding things you want or keeping a combo piece. If your opponent's going to force you to discard it, whoop, I'll put it on top of my deck and draw it back next turn, whatever. That can be a very just generally useful card, whether you're digging to find things or save things in your hand sometimes. So Brainstorm is very easy, included in almost any blue deck. And then I just like having some fun, because why not? Because one of the other combos more synergy in this case, that people used to love with Stasis right from Alpha was, what else do you play with Stasis? Well, Sarah Angel, of course, because it doesn't tap to attack, so it's not going to get locked down. Unless they've got, an Icy and they can tap it for you or something. But also around the Planar Chaos time, they printed Sarah Sphinx. So you could add your Sarah Angel in blue now as well. A little bit better than the good old air elemental. So I included some of these just for fun and the nostalgia of imagining having my Sarah Angels in blue, sort of. So, and then again, because I'm down to one color, I could play the safe route and just include islands upon islands upon islands. Actually, hold on. Let me check something here. I used to include some of my favorite arts. And again, I don't think ordinarily I'd include some snow-covered islands in here. Here's a good old one that I liked from Unglued.
Man, Ezra can scream, can't he?
You want to grab the
Just a second, I'm almost done. That's
okay. As I recall, I had trouble finding one of the islands from Onslaught when I was putting together the Onslaught set. So I might have them all in here actually. So I just want to check and see if I was missing one.
sorry, I'm so close to finishing this, and I would show everybody what I've been working on while you've been doing this live stream.
Whether I've got it here or not. Yeah, I do have all the Onslaught Islands in this deck. When I was picking basic lands, there used to be a few criteria I would look for. Generally, I prefer the old frames.
No, come on.
And when possible, I also like to have tap to add. So Onslaught's not one of my top tier lands usually, but I still use them. I don't mind the old revised 4th edition lands. They've still got the tap to add. Explains what they do right on the card. You don't need a rule book to find out what that symbol means.
Oh no.
Makes it easier for new players.
Come on, don't do that.
It's even clearer if they actually include the word tap instead of a T symbol or a sideways
show
arrow.
them what I've been working on while you were doing this. Check that out. It's a coaster. How pretty is that? All right, back to the regular scheduled program.
Yeah. But usually, if you got both the classic black bordered and a tap to add and an art that I like, so I would run a lot of basic lands from Ice Age, from Mirage, sometimes. I'm trying to remember whether the Tempest ones still had the tap to add. I think they did. There's a Saga. Yeah, I think they did too. So it really just depended what I had available. But I would like to keep a balance of those. Here's a nice... Oh.
You can show the other ones.
Here's a nice invasion one, but again, it's just got the big blue drip.
We've just got one more to do. It's a set of 8, but here, let me show you what we've got done so far. Got this one. Is that upside down? No, it's right. There you go. I got these off Temu.
These are neat coasters. They're based off Van Gogh art. We got them as a gift for my parents, and the kids have been helping to put them together, but we didn't quite get them finished in time for our visit this weekend.
Yeah.
So we're finishing them up as we get a chance.
This one's probably one of my favorites. I like that one.
Yeah, that's pretty.
And then there's this one.
And then there's the famous Starry Night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
They are nice coasters.
Temu for the win.
So yeah. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13,
Yeah, the sunflower's
14,
pretty.
15, 16, 17, 18, 27, 28, 29, 30.
Abram said he wanted to do this, so I gotta find out if he wants to finish one. This is the last one we have to do still. So.
Yeah. This deck, like I said, I haven't used it in ages. And to be honest, it probably needs a little refining. I wouldn't call this quite a full deck list, ready deck, because things like, I probably wouldn't run a full set of the Sarah Sphinx that's in there just for fun, so probably only 1 or 2, and I would make sure I've got enough free counter spells.
This one's pretty though.
Yeah, I think they got a few of the famous artists to do secret layer drops of lands. And I'm sure they are very nice. But I've never gone out of my way to get them. I've just been happy to play with the piles of basic lands I've accumulated over the years. I do try and pick up certain basic lands when I see them in trades. I try to get some, especially black bordered basics from alpha or beta. I love having these in my deck. They're my absolute favorite just because they're the originals, more or less, and they are hard to come by. I've got a few for each color, except blue. Blue has proven the hardest for me to find.
Blue what? Sorry.
I've only got one beta island, and it's not in
okay.
great shape. So, c'est la vie.
I'm glad that
But
I love this.
for just building a deck, I've got enough to do with what I want. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah.
Did you show this?
So as this is sitting here right now, I've got 61 cards in it, I believe. But like I said, I'd probably drop
Sorry,
1 to 3 Sarah Sphinxes and include some Force of Wills and stuff just to make sure.
Did you read that last comment right there?
The Mark Poole land
Yeah.
set? Yeah.
Sorry, I was distracted. I was cleaning up.
So yeah, this was a whole pile of combos. There's a pile more. There's almost endless combos out there. But I just thought I wanted to go through some of the ones I use in decks, I've put in decks, historically I've used in decks, and especially focusing on some of the older cards. Because when it comes to newer cards, it's just endless. There's so many ways. You know, I like Cold Snap, you know. It was a fun set. But guess what? There's ways to break counterbalance. Lots of ways. Sensei's Divining Top is probably the most famous early on. Then you've got Dark Depths. Oh, wait. Here comes Vampire Hexmage. That's an easy... Here's my big bruiser. And then they came up with Espion Stage, which is another even easier way, potentially, to do the same thing. There's so many different combos out there now that it's just impossible to keep track of. But I like to focus my thoughts when I do think of this game on how it was when I started playing and in the earlier years as things developed. How things have developed since then, I just haven't kept up with as much as I would have liked.
Should we tell new viewers what we're going to open once we hit 2,000 subscribers?
Oh, we can. What got me back into Magic again was the Tales of Middle-earth set that came out. I expect they'll do more Tales of Middle-earth. They'll probably, instead of Tales of Middle-earth, The Lord of the Rings, they'll probably come out with the Tales of Middle-earth, The Hobbit set next. And who knows if that's popular, maybe they'll do Tales of Middle-earth, The Silmarillion. Or if they feel like doing, you know, some cross-promoting and licensing arrangements, maybe they'll do Tales of Middle-earth, The Rings of Power. Who knows what they might choose to do, but it gives them a chance to reprint some of these cards, which they otherwise might not have the license. People are worried about, you know, the One Ring. How do you, you know, reprint a licensed card unless you're just giving it something functional similar? That would be a way they could do that.
Jim says a Hobbit only deck would be so funny to play.
It could be. Honestly, they'd bring the Hobbit book-based Tales of Middle-earth set would give you all kinds of opportunities for dwarves as well. So, and they could actually have a Smaug card instead of just a tail that gives you a Smaug. Guru Lands is what I was thinking about. Wouldn't mind seeing some more Transformers cards.
We didn't really get too much into Transformers.
See, Transformers are such a double-edged sword. In terms of the actual cartoon show, the Transformers, I think they adapted those quite well to Magic the Gathering using the Transform mechanic. My problem is with the Transform mechanic in Magic the Gathering. I think it's horrible. It makes the cards almost unplayable. You have to memorize both sides. You kind of have to reference. You're pulling them in and out of your sleeves, flipping them around. If you're not using sleeves, you can't even put them in your deck. It's just so counterproductive to playing physical Magic. I don't like the transform mechanic. I do think it was very well used and applied when they made those cards. That's the best thing I can say. For it.
Derek says he
Thematically
agrees. He just means more for collectors thing.
Yeah,
collectors is cool.
Yeah, as a collector piece, I did pick up some of those Transformers cards.
Read the first comment from Unicorn before you read that.
I'm trying.
Sorry.
I only keep up with what interests me in Magic. I mostly play Commander since 60 card kitchen table Magic doesn't happen as often for me. Yeah, I can see that. Commander's become brutally popular in some respects. It's just taken over the game in some ways that I don't really appreciate. But I understand why. It's a fun format. It means you don't have to acquire play sets of everything you want to use. You just one copy and that's fine. It does hinder options for deck construction, which can be good if you want a more casual format. It makes combos harder to pull off because you only got one copy in your deck. So it does have some very real advantages. And I do play it from time to time, but I remember the development of it, at least in the area I was. So it started out as Highlander decks, where it was just there can only be one copy only of everything, 100 card decks. And then it evolved to EDH. So you had Elder Dragon Highlander. So you picked, a guy to lead your deck basically, and you could only use that one's colors in your one of each 100 card deck. And you had to have rules to have access to it, whatever. That developed a little bit around that time. And then it became an official format, and they started making sets and cards designed for it. And that's where it went off the rails, in my opinion. And honestly, when I play Commander, I still play it like Highlander. I happen to have my Commander sitting over there, and I may never even play it during the game. I just play with my deck, basically.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm having trouble keeping up with comments here. You would dislike playing my werewolf deck, LOL. All the creatures transform. Yes, and thematically, I can understand for werewolves and some other things, the transform mechanic kind of makes some logical sense. It's just the physical mechanics of playing with the cards I find to be way too clunky for Magic the Gathering, personally. It's cheaper for us since I haven't been able to work since last year this time. That might have been towards Christmas gifts. Anyway, but yeah, there's lots of ways that you can save money and still do nice things. So, in both realms.
Doing these things too.
Yeah, well, you still have to purchase the kits.
Yeah, they weren't that expensive though.
Yeah, Magic has kind of formed around Commander, unfortunately. Yeah, to a large degree. Entering the dungeons was a lot for opponents to track too. Entering the dungeons.
Was that for the Dungeons and Dragons or something? Because didn't they come out with the Dungeons and Dragons?
They did come out with the Dungeons and Dragons set, but there was also a card in Unglued Unhinged, I think was the second set, which was kind of like Scheherazade, where you played Enter the Dungeon, and then you started a sub-game of Magic under the table, and would, play for some sort of reward. I'm not sure which of those he's referencing, but... Yeah, the D&D set. Okay, the D&D set I've heard of. I think there's more than one, actually. But to be honest, that was before I got back into Magic, and so I don't really know anything about it, and I never caught up with it.
I think we kind of started when we got the Princess Bride Secret Lair came out, and then not long around that time was the Lord of the Rings. But
I have a stack of a few other things here, which, just some Planeswalkers. Planeswalkers was another thing, because Planeswalkers, when the game first came out, was just the players. You're the Planeswalker, you control the cards, you interact with things. You could play things like Personal Incarnation, which meant, ooh, look, I am entering the game as a creature. And that became your embodiment as a creature in the game, as a Planeswalker sort of thing. That all went off the rails more and more as they started making Planeswalker cards that you could recruit others to sort of help you. And one of the original Tron cards. No, it's not. I'm sorry. But Urzatron has been around since antiquities. I'm sorry. But Tron decks, Urza's land-based decks,
your reaction, I think it's awesome.
were around way before Karn ever came out. I disagree. Sorry. Modern Tron. Sorry. Okay. Fair enough. I mean, I remember I made a Karn Silver Golem deck, the Karn artifact creature from Urza's Legacy, or no, Urza's Saga, one of those, Urza's Block, and I built a Elder Dragon Highlander deck with that as my general. So all colorless lands, all artifacts. This was before Eldrazi were around, so there were no colorless instants that you could draw on. I was restricted for the deck to all artifacts and lands with no color. That was a challenge, and it was fun, and it wasn't a particularly good deck, but it was fun to try. So anyway, yeah, Tron lands are from antiquities. So, got good old Phyrexian Metamorph in here, Gifts Ungiven, Fact or Fiction. That was some fun from Invasion. Whoops, I should do this so it's a little bit more clear.
So Founder's also doing an auction for Pug Rescue.
There's good old Mind Break Trap if you're looking for free counterspell. Stifle. Stifle is a gross card. Counter target activated or triggered ability. So you could use this on your Phyrexian Dreadnought and cancel its come into play ability where you had to sacrifice creatures and get it out real quick. Or if your opponent's playing fetch lands, they're going to go tutor up a land with it. No, they're not. They just lost their land drop. Yeah. Stifle was always fun. Flutterstorm. It wasn't long after the first round of Commander decks came out that I took a break from the game. But when this first came out, there was a couple of interesting cards in there that I thought were, offered up some things that hadn't really been available before. Flutterstorm was one of them. Chaos Warp was another. And I made sure I picked up the deck that came with those cards just so I'd have it available. Against Storm, stuff like that can be fun. Oh, here's another free spell. Misdirection. This won't help break you out of a stasis lock, though, with Chronostasis.
That's amazing, Founder. That's awesome.
Good old Mind Twist. Good way to empty your opponent's hand. Works nice with Magrim. Swords to Plowshares. One of the original and best removal spells still to this day. Did you ever see someone use a smokestack back in the day? I heard of it, but it wasn't a strategy that was used much in my group. I did have a friend who did build a deck with it a little bit later on, and yeah, it could be annoying. But it wasn't a big thing in our area for the most part. Oh, this one, Miamo School at Water's Edge. I used to love this with Tolarian Academy. Just another way to use it some more. But I used to include this one in my university deck. I had a bunch of lands that were sort of university themed. I had the Tolarian Academy, the School at the Water's Edge. I included Tabernacle of Pendrell Vale, Library of Alexandria, just all the fun, learned lands, let's say. And still like digging it out from time to time. Split Second, very strong ability. Just force your thing through so it can't be countered, basically. Destroy target artifact or enchantment is always a handy effect to have access to in your decks. Anyone remember Tarmogoyf? This guy was big business for a while, but apparently he's very slipped off. Maybe the original Lurgoyf is actually more interesting these days. Hard to say, but I still like Lurgoyf. Tarmogoyf was fun. I actually got lucky in terms of when Future Sight came out. I wasn't buying a whole lot of cards, but I walked into a new card shop that had just opened, and they had, basically acquired complete sets of the recent sets and had them all laid out and were selling them for Scry value. If you remember old Scry magazine for pricing, yeah, but they were selling them at median values.
Is that close to my mom's?
And yeah, it was. And the high scry value on this had already jumped up over $30, but the median value was still sitting at $5. So I got this for $5 from a store at a time when the value was easily $30 and still going up. So that was one of my lucky stories. Speaking of transform cards, here's a Garruk the Relentless. Good old Trigon Predator, if you like blue-green flying. Whenever Trigon Predator deals damage
come across that place. Do you remember
to a player, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment that player controls. Yeah. So this is when artifact and enchantment hate had shifted from white to green.
Do you remember how we found out about that store? Did somebody
Not
tell us?
clearly.
Or?
Probably. Maybe it was when Skylar was still into it in the area or something.
Maybe.
Or, I don't know. Edric, Spy Master of Trest. So again, from that first commander deck. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may draw a card. So there's a very sort of political type effect that can get you extra stuff. Sylvan Library was always good. Maelstrom Pulse, again, handy. Everybody needs a strip mine. I'm sorry. It's just a staple. Strip mine is so good. I still can't believe they restricted it. It seems totally fair to me. But then again, maybe not as fun as some people. Well, that's the usual complaint. Pithing Needle. Is there a troublesome card your opponent has? Oh, easy solution. There you go, Pithing Needle. Or Meddling Mage, something like that. Now we're getting into combos again. I knew there was one in here somewhere. Oath of Druids. Anyone remember these from back in the day? During each player's upkeep, if that player controls fewer creatures than target opponent, the player may reveal cards from his or her library until he or she reveals a creature card. That player puts the creature card into play and all other revealed cards into his or her graveyard. So you'd load up your deck with huge beastie creatures, kind of like my Eureka deck, and then make sure your opponent has more creatures than you, and you can just flip into one each turn and put them into play. This was one of the favorite ways of doing that. Forbidden Orchard. Tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. And for the downside, whenever you tap Forbidden Orchard for mana, put a 1/1 colorless spirit token into play under target opponent's control. Oh gee, you don't want to play creatures because of my Oath of Druid sitting there? Here's one anyway. Have your 1/1 spirit
Ryan.
token.
How you doing?
And I'll go get a big beastie. So this was a combo that, yeah, saw a lot of play at one point in time. Still fun. But I haven't heard of any decks that do it recently. Yeah, I played that card. Yeah.
Oh, you got
Free play, nice.
Okay, sorry.
Did you ever see someone use a small... Okay. There you go. So there's another combo. There's a good old Phyrexian Revoker. As it enters the battlefield, name a non-land card. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name cannot be activated. So again, a way to lock down certain nasty pieces for your opponent. There's an Opal Guardian.
Just unplug this. It should be charged now.
Yeah.
The iPad sorely needs charging.
Oh, good old Circle of Protection. I get to pick what. So, for an extra mana, when it comes into play, choose a color. The next time the source of your choice would deal of the chosen color would deal damage to you. Prevent that damage. I mean, you got to use white instead of colorless mana, but Circle of Protections were always annoying, and Greater Realm of Preservation was nice because it was 2-in-1, red and black. This is even better because whatever they're playing, you can just pick their most prevalent color. Now, here's an interesting little piece of serendipity, I suppose you'd say. Vengeful Archon from M11. This sort of is a mirror with Archon of Cruelty. I just got my first Archon of Cruelty. What was it, last week? No, 2 weeks ago when we opened that Duskborn box on stream. The little one shaped like a TV. And I got a poster card for Archon of Cruelty. But it had the Vengeful Archon here long before that. So, actually, is this the one? Or is it? I don't know. Anyway. Angela, can you manage chat? I need to eat before I hit the hay, said his founder.
Yeah, I'm coming. I'm just...
Yeah, she'll be right back in a minute here, but she's still around. I was
just making a bagel. A blueberry bagel.
There's a good old mass calcify. That's wrath everyone but me.
Oh, awesome tank. That's helpful.
Good if you're in a mono white deck. Which I do have a mono white commander deck.
I too am getting something to eat. We skipped lunch, so...
Oh, goody. Another way to reanimate creatures. Karmic Guide. Anyone remember this one? You could trick things out like something with that, too. Here's an Eternal Dragon. Plane Cycling 2, if you didn't need it. Dragons in colors other than red for a while were hard to find.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, there it is.
Angel of Jubilation. Other non-black creatures you control get +1/+1. So, as long as you didn't have black in your deck, that was great. Players can't pay life or sacrifice creatures to cast spells or activate abilities. That could lock a lot of things down these days. But depends how often you encounter such things. And it's just a creature, so it's fragile. But you know what? I love Karmic Guide in my Angels Commander deck. Yeah, it can be useful. Creatures are fragile. But you know what I like to run in a lot of my decks anyway? Lightning Greaves. Oh, look, haste and hexproof. That makes it a little tougher to get rid of, and a little bit more punch when it comes into play, and it costs free to equip. So you can give everything haste when you play it, just about, for free, after you have the Lightning Greaves in play. And if you get a specific creature that you want to protect, just leave it on. That's one of my big recommendations for EDH. If you're going to run equipment, Lightning Greaves is a great one. It might not be as broken as Skull Clamp, but it's really strong and a lot of fun. Ooh, speaking of combos, good night, Founder. Here's a replenish. Return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to play. We've been making a lot of enchantments lately. I noticed that in Duskborn, there's enchantment lands and more enchantment creatures and things like that. So I'm glad I got some Serra's Sanctums. Those will be handy if I get an enchantment deck going one day. I do have an enchantment deck that's based around Lee lines already, using the Serra's Sanctums. And that's sort of a combo deck as well. You just drop 4 Lee lines in play on turn 1. Easy enough. There's so many Lee lines in every color, and it doesn't matter. Just fill the deck with so many Lee lines that you are likely to get. You know, half your opening hand or more is Lee lines. And drop any 4 Lee lines that don't mess with the combo. There's only a couple that do, onto play for free. And then drop your Serra's Sanctum, or if you don't get it, you could play a Forest and Crop rotation and go get your Serra's Sanctum and put it into play. That works too. Then once you got your Serra's Sanctum and your 4 Lee lines, tap your Serra's Sanctum for 4 white, dropping Opalescence. All your enchantments become creatures with power and toughness equal to their casting cost. They've all got casting cost of 4, including the Opalescence. So then you've got 5 4/4 creatures in play. Opponent's turn. They better have something, because otherwise you're swinging in the next turn with an army of 4/4s that'll end the game in an awful hurry. So, yeah, another little combo deck I made, speaking of enchantments. There you go.
I don't know what that
Ooh, Goblin Electromancer, if you like cheaper things again. How do you feel about rooms? They're interesting. At least they don't have to flip and stuff, but you do have to have some tokens around to mark which side is open and which one's empty, or which one's open and which one's closed or whatnot, and then you can open them up. It's a neat idea. I do think it's a little bit clunky, but not as bad as some things. I've seen one or two that are interesting enough to try to play, but most of them really don't jump out at me that much, to be honest. But, I mean, it's something new they're trying, so I don't mind it, per se. He's in a room right now, of course I am. So here's another one that hits a whole bunch of token creatures at once. As a ping with haste and flash. So that's a great way to deal with a horde of 1/1 tokens. Then we've got Vandal Blast, destroy target artifact you don't control, overload. Overload cards are interesting. And again, this came from, was it Return to Ravnica? I think. Which was the last set that I got like a booster box worth of or something. And then I sort of stepped away from the game from that point on until basically the Tales of Middle-earth came out. So what year was this? 2012? So from 2012 until 2023, the end of 2023.
Really fall asleep in Isobulton?
I was sort of out of things.
How about Ezra?
And
I think Ezra still.
yeah, that sort of got distracted there, talking about Tales of Middle-earth. But if we hit our 2,000 subscribers as a celebration, I managed to get my hands, almost a year ago now, so before the prices went nuts, on one of those Lord of the Ring collector boxes from the holiday special edition ones. So, looking forward to digging into that.
That should be fun.
I got very few of the box topper cards, and those are in there. There's poster cards in there. There's Hildebrandt art cards in there. And then a lot of the cards also have those swirly foil borders, which I was not sure about at first, but they do look kind of neat. And a lot of those have some value too. I haven't finished. I still don't have a full play set of 9 Nazgul yet. So I'm really hoping that there's a Nazgul or 2 in that box. It's really unlikely that there would be 2. But I hope there's at least one. So I'm really looking forward to digging into that, and they've become harder to find and more expensive lately. So I'm glad I got them before the prices went through the roof. And so we've been saving it and plan on opening that as a celebration. We did a big celebration when we hit 1,000 subscribers. So we're saving that one for when we hit 2,000, and we're actually making good progress.
Yeah, we're doing. Really. I can't believe how far we've come. And it's thanks to everyone who continue to watch us and share us. And
I just learned that Kismet has been reworked to affect all opponents. I have an enchantment commander deck that makes enchantments into zombies. Okay. Well, that's kind of neat. Sort of like Opalescence then, I guess. That's definitely another way to do it. Counter flux cannot be countered. Counter target spell you don't control. Overload. So there's another overload card. I kind of like. We've been doing this for a long time. What was the first one? Was it Undermine? Something like that? Where they had 2 blue and then add another color to give an extra effect onto a counter spell. I think Undermine was 2 blue and a black, and it dealt 3 damage. There was another one with a white, and you gained 3 life. And they've just expanded from there. They made Constricting Boa a little while later. It was 2 blue, a green, and a colorless to get a 2/2 snake and counter a spell with flash. You know, that was kind of fun. Sort of like getting 2 cards in one. Here's a Hypersonic Dragon. 4/4 for 5, just like an old air elemental, except it's 2 colors. And instead of just a 4/4 flyer, you get a 4/4 flyer haste, and you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. So That's nice compared to what I grew up with. This somewhat impressive. Oh yeah, and then these little double color cards. That's one thing I've been working on, catching up on some of the new rules. I mean, I remember Phyrexian mana and these double mana symbols before I stopped playing. But then I come back and they've got stuff like what is it? Devotion to. So you got devotion to colors, and I had to rely on people telling me since in chat, okay, so if I've got this on the table as a creature with a red-blue mana symbol, and I've got counting for devotion, does this count as blue? Does this count as red? Does it count as half blue? Or does it count, does it count as neither? But apparently it counts as both, but it can only be one or the other at a time. So there's that. Oh, here's another random Planeswalker card. Tiamo the Moon Sage. Back from, is this Avacyn Restored? Yeah, sounds about right. I don't know if this one was any good. Tap target permanent. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap phase, so it's sort of got an Icy Manipulator type effect. Draw a card for each tapped creature target player controls, or get an emblem. Oh yeah, emblems. There's something else I keep forgetting about. Just, a random permanent token that gives you a tweak to the rules somehow. Oh, I remember this being popular. Contagion class. When Contagion class enters the battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, and you can pay 4 and tap it to proliferate.
That's gross.
Proliferate was a handy ability to have available, and this gave you a little bit of value on it when it came into play as well. Nowadays, it seems like everything adds. Oh, yeah, here's another interesting tidbit. Magosi the Water Veil. This is, I think, their attempt to fix Time Walk. Time Vault. So they turned it into a land. It enters the battlefield tapped, just like Time Vault. You can tap it for a blue mana, because it's blue, I guess. And you can pay a blue and tap it to put an Eon counter on Magosi, the Water Veil, and skip your next turn. So it's messing with counters, so you could proliferate and increase those counters, I guess, once you have one on there. But you do have to skip your next turn to get the first one. And you can tap it and remove an Eon counter from it and return it to its owner's hand. So that will keep you from doing the proliferating thing, I guess. Take an extra turn after this one. So from Zendikar, this was their attempt to fix Time Vault by using counters and a whole lot of extra conditions. And I guess this would play very much like Time Vault was intended to play, but I still think Time Vault was intended to be broken. So there you go. Oh, there's a fun one. Confiscate. A little expensive, but just control enchanted permanent. That can mess up somebody's day. What else do I have out here? Ooh, Argothian Worm. I used to love this. I used to love Earn-Handed Djinn. And this was similar in the fact that it cost the same as Earn-Handed Djinn, but it was a 6/6 trample instead of a 4/5, so an even more efficient body for your 4 mana. When it comes into play, any player may sacrifice a land to put Argothian Worm on top of its owner's library. Now, I used to play mainly duels, but even in a multiplayer, this can be annoying. Somebody's got to step up, or, they don't care enough, and then you just get a big creature. But in a duel, they can sacrifice land to put it back on top of your deck. Well, technically, that's not card disadvantage, but you're paying 4 costs to get rid of a land. It's your opponent's choice to do that. So it didn't happen all that much, to be honest, because they know that next turn, guess what? You've still got your 4 mana, probably. You're going to draw it again, you're going to play it again, and they're going to be in the same situation, except they're going to end up giving up a land every turn. Unless they're beating you down and hope to kill you in this loop before you can actually get it to stick. They better be winning on the board to make that worthwhile. Otherwise, they're just going to let you get your 6/6 trample for 4.
Excuse me.
And nowadays, there's probably so many easy answers for it anyway. There's another one of those. Ooh. Remember when they took Dark Ritual and started putting it in other colors? Specifically, wow, you got Elvish Spirit Guide, wasn't really a ritual, in green. But then you got Simeon Spirit Guide, or when they came out with Plane Shift.
I didn't.
And in Mirrodin block, See Things Song.
Still up playing with them.
Pay 3 and get 5. So it's still +2 to your mana, but it takes a little bit more to get going, so it's not as good on the first turn. Honestly, I think it does make good sense in red as well as black, but mana rituals were always a bit problematic. And having them in red and black worked very nicely when I put together a Dragonstorm deck. I think that's more synergy than anything else, but when you're dealing with storm spells, mana rituals become much stronger.
If you want to go to bed, just tell Abram that I said it's okay for you to sleep in there tonight.
There's a Frostburn Weird.
In his room, in the bedroom.
I always liked weird cards. Yeah, speaking of Spirit Guides, there's good old Elvish Spirit Guide. And again, and again, and again. There were a lot of interesting uncommons in Ice Age, and that was, like I said, that was the second set that released after I started playing. You had Homelands, and there was a big gap, and then people were highly anticipating alliances. And in some ways, yeah, the creatures weren't as crazy as, they were made out to be, but there were a lot of good cards, and a lot of cards that didn't disappoint. Elvish Spirit Guide was one of those. Force of Will. Actually, most of the lands that you could play for instants you could play for free. I used Scars of the Veteran and got decent value out of it a surprising amount of times. Pyrokinesis was a little bit narrow, hitting only creatures. But I saw it pulled out once in a while. Contagion was played a lot. Force of Will was played a lot. Bounty Hunt was probably the least used. But, oh, goody. Another werewolf card. This one doesn't transform, though. But it can regenerate. They seem to have gotten rid of regenerate on a lot of newer cards, I've noticed. And flash. So, hey, it shows up as a 3/3 for 3 when, was it Trained Armageddon came out? That was a 3/3 for 3, and that was cool just in being that, because that was power creep right there. Well, this is that with flash and regenerate.
I hear Azure crying. I better go down and see what's going on.
And I'm sure that it's been power crept even beyond that now. So there you go. What else do I have in here? Dizzy Spell. Ooh, Transmute. Being able to transmute to go find things. That was fun. Deadeye Navigator. Contagion Engine. Lightning Mauler. Lightning Mauler had a similar sort of effect to Lightning Greaves. You can pair it to give another creature haste. So, yeah, you never know what you're going to find in these random piles of cards that I pull out to divide my decks in my boxes here. What have I got? I got 2 commander decks in here. One of them is a red-blue deck. Looks like that's a Niv Mizzet deck. And then I've got a Commander Isha deck here. Always fun. They've deemed Regenerate is too complex for new players. Wow. This was not something that a lot... Well, I guess there was some debate about it. But they've changed the rules on Regenerate so much over the years. It used to be you could put regeneration shields on something when it was under no threat of dying as many times as you wanted, and they lasted until the end of the... Was it the end of the turn or the end of the phase? Anyway, it doesn't seem like that complex an ability to me, even though they keep changing the rules, like they kept changing the wording on Animate Dead and things. Drain Life, is it an X-Spell? Is it not an X-Spell? They keep making things more complicated than they need to be in an attempt to clarify things, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway. So there's a couple of my decks with combos that I pulled out. A lot of times I just like to run efficient beater decks. Or, you know, I don't know. Would you call that a combo? Running stuff like Mogmaniac and Stuffy Doll with Blasphemous Act. Just bounce the damage around and at your opponent. I guess it's kind of a combo, but yeah, they've recently changed how blocking works. The attacker no longer orders blockers, just decides how damage is dealt. Honestly, I think that's pretty similar to how it used to be, and then they changed it, and then now they're changing it back. Yeah, Stuffy Doll and Blasphemous Act could be considered a combo deck. Yeah, I'm not surprised. So there's another one for you. But yeah, I guess it's getting late. We still have a lot of presents to wrap, actually, so I probably shouldn't drag this out too late. It looks like nobody's taken me up on my challenge, which is unfortunate. I'm going to have to try and line up somebody, you know, I know to come in next time to actually give me a challenge with this whole duel concept one of these days. But that's okay. I enjoy it either way. I just love a chance to pull out my old cards and actually play with them in a new way instead of having my, you know, vintage deck with a lot of them sitting in a box waiting to play, and I don't get very many opportunities to play anymore, so there's that. But I would throw together little decks like this when new sets would come out, just with synergies. So here was a sort of Scars of Mirrodin era deck with Mem Knights, Porcelain Legionnaire, creatures you control, artifact creatures you can control get +2/+2, Tempered Steel, more Mem Knights, Glint Hawks, Etched Champions, Ancient Dens, Chimeric Mass, Glint Hawk, Ornithopters, of course, Ancient Dens again, Steel Overseer. Again, just going for a quick artifact beater type deck. Porcelain Legionnaire.
Excuse me, oh my goodness.
Quest for the Holy Relic. I think I had... What else? So there's a Skyfisher. They were fun. And they worked well with zero-cost artifacts, as I recall. So some little synergies again in there, but mainly just a little beatdown deck. Ooh. Is this what I think it is? Yes, it was. Woohoo. I'll grab that and show it off too. Just because it was another deck that was just inspired by a set that, you know, I had gotten a box of or whatever. Here it's another little blue deck. I do like the art on this island. Very much so. Just the waves crashing on the shore. I think Michael Comark here did a great job on this island art. That's, you know, you like art. What do you think of that one?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, me too. But this was an illusion deck that came out around M12 because they included some illusion stuff in there.
That almost looks like a real picture.
Almost. So I dug through and I got my Mistform War Chief from Scourge. Creature spells you play that share a creature type with Mistform War Chief cost 1 less to play, and you can change its creature type by tapping it until end of turn. But it's an illusion, so it went in my illusion deck. And so did Krovikan Mist. Flying, Krovikan Mist, power and toughness each equal to the number of illusions in play. So it starts off as a 1/1 flying for 2, which isn't great, but you get some more illusions and could get big fast. There were 3 cards in M12 that really put the tipping point for this deck. The first was Phantasmal Bear. Blue almost never, at this time, got creatures this efficient. A 2/2 for 1 in blue. When Phantasmal Bear is the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. So no casting unstable mutations to pump it or anything. But it was just a straight up a 2/2 for 1. Your opponent had to target it with something to get rid of it, basically. And then you drop a Krovikan Mist the next turn, and it's going to be your 2/2 flying. And then they also had a Phantasmal Dragon, a Dragon Illusion in blue for 4 for a 5/5 flying. And again, when it becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. So that's a significant downside. But they were very efficiently costed creatures for blue. So, and then if your opponent did throw out something in the way, well, there's always a good old control magic for that. That never goes out of style. Brainstorm to find what you need. Oh yeah, here's the art on the good old snow-covered mountain for Cold Snap. I do like that art. I'd like the epicness of this art and the design of it a little bit better. The one from Ice Age looks a little goofier on the island, just with the heads of snow out on the island. But anyway, here's the third card. Lord of the Unreal. 2 mana, 2/2, still fairly efficient. Illusion creatures you control get +1/+1 as a lord, but he's not an illusion itself, and have hexproof. So all those creatures with downsides about being targeted can't be targeted and get bigger. This guy and those illusionary bear and dragon, that's what inspired me to make this deck. And yeah, I did what I could with it. And I threw in some Jace's Ingenuity, why not? Well, here's a good old Tempest Time Warp, take an extra turn, because why not? I think it was in the set as well. So I just pulled out an older copy I have. Here's an Adarkar Wind Form, another illusion. 3/3 flyer for 5, a little expensive, but target creature loses flying until end of turn, so you can control your other creature's flyers and kick them out of the sky with snow mana. Why not? Throw in some other illusions that never get to see much play. Dream Prowler from Strongholds. There's another illusionary creature that never sees much play, but whoops, it's gotta gives it an opportunity to shine. Just because. I almost forgot about this deck. Oh, here's another M12. This one, man, the printing, I don't know if the ink ran or just smudged or something, but this card came out of the pack like that, and look at, like...
Oh my goodness.
Look at the smudging around the expansion symbol, the 0 in its power and toughness, and the casting cost. It's just ugliness.
We should have bought that one that was closer to $100. We may never get it.
Maybe,
it's jumping in price.
Maybe not. And again, it's an illusion for 2, and basically it's an illusion clone. And it comes into the battlefield. It's a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it's an illusion to its other types, and it has, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. So half the cost for a clone with the same illusion downside. But again, Lord of the Unreal, take care of that for you. Another Mistform War Chief, Mana Leak, Illusionary Servant. This is sacrifice it. Yeah, it's a 3 for a 3/4 flying, basically. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's the Ice Age snow-covered island, because I was just talking about it. So here's for comparison's sake. And again, I just like to have a few snow-covered lands in my decks, just in case. More control magic. Gold, Mark Pool, Counterspell, and the less good, in my opinion, updated Counterspell art. That I just like the classic art so much better. That just looks disappointing. I didn't mind the Ice Age art for Counterspell. I thought that was pretty good. And the Tempest art was okay. At least it was better than the 6th edition here. But, oh, this is a phantasm written on the card here. But I think, at the time at least, when you checked the Oracle rules, this had been changed to count as an illusion. That's why this made the cut. Ice Age counterspells art was of an actual person, too. No, I'm not too surprised at that. Oh, there's a Phantom Warrior, an Illusion Warrior from way back in M10, but it predated that. They weren't putting new... Well, where are they putting new cards in by then? Oh yeah, there you go. There's the Ice Age counterspell. Classic. Or classy. Whatever you want to call it.
They sold out of the new set. They just got stock today because it's not on the store anymore.
Well, could be. I'm not too surprised.
Unless they just didn't put it on the store.
Anyway.
No, wait, they did. I looked.
That was the type of thing where, you know, a creature type that you don't see often gets a couple of new interesting ones and you can build a whole deck around it. I enjoyed that. I haven't got to play it as much as I would like, but one of these days. I'm still waiting for Minotaurs to get their day in the sun. I have a couple of didgeridoos and actually sitting on a seal box of Homelands if I really want to go digging for more, but oh yeah, here's a zombie deck. Because, you know, they've made so many zombie. Some tribes get all the support. There's endless support for goblins and zombies these days. And, you know, elves and merfolk have always had some support at least. But, yeah, if you're a fan of thralls, good luck. Thalids, once in a blue moon. There's just some creature types that really don't get so much support, so yeah. Yeah, lots of options for zombie decks. Vampire decks were a little bit thinner, but they've had a few sets now where vampires have become a much more popular theme over the years recently, from what I can tell. Ever since, when did that start? Zendikar? Or Innistrad? I don't know. Both of those had... Things were starting to step up at that time for good old vampires. Amonkhet gave Minotaurs a few cards. They're honestly few and far between. Also, never forget Didgeridoo from Homelands. Yeah, Didgeridoo's got a lot of potential, but the Minotaur base just isn't quite there. It's also got... Homelands also gave us the Anima Spirit Crafter, which gives Minotaurs +1/+0, which... You know, it's nice to have a Lord-type character, even if it's not as good as most. Original Innistrad gave vampires a lot of support. Yeah, it sure did. And it had a decent theme. Like, I like it when they get more original with their themes. Innistrad, they hadn't done that theme in a long time. But basically, it was a reworking of the theme from The Dark. Because The Dark had a lot of those sort of old horror elements in it as well. But I did appreciate Innistrad on that front. And I did like Bloomburrow, the cutesy animal, you know, sort of theme. I thought that was semi-original and appreciated as a change of pace. So that grabbed my attention in this past year here. Duskmourn is more sort of more modern horror tropes, and it didn't grab my attention as much. Although I did pick up that TV box just because the package they put together for it was well done. I appreciated that product particular, although the set itself wasn't as interesting to me as Bloomburrow.
I love Bloomburrow.
Yeah,
the
Bloomburrow's
nice.
So we did manage to find and opened along with that other tin a week or two back, one of those Walmart tins that has a lot of the boosters from
you put the one that fell
sets.
down back up?
So yeah, I don't know about some of these combos, but like I say, some people try things that work, some people try things that don't. The classic combo, and this is one that I would like, you know, honestly, confirmation on from people who know the rules a little bit more up to date than I do. But I'm pretty sure this works because people have been doing as fragile a combo as it is. It's got the potential. Time Vault animate it, and putting instill energy on it to get infinite turns for a while. But I'm pretty sure Paralyze works too. You just got to have the 4 to pay to untap it at the start of your upkeep, and then you can just tap it for your extra turn every turn. As long as you got the 4 mana, still get infinite turns. It's just instill energy does it cheaper. But instill energy is an uncommon and Paralyze is a common, so they're easier to find if you're looking at playing with original cards anyway. Also, I find the art on Paralyze to be more interesting again with the whole centaur thing. I don't remember centaurs in Magic other than that art until basically Jor-El's centaur in Mirage. I know Windseeker centaur was around as a book promo, but I never, no one in my area had them. So I knew Windseeker centaur existed, and there was the art from Paralyze, but centaurs weren't really around to be seen and played with from my memory until Mirage came out, and you got Jor-El centaur. Yeah, Time Vault becomes a creature. Instant energy still sees it as a creature. Time Vault combos with a breadstick, to be honest. Voltaic Key. Yeah, I mean, I went over that before when I discussed it the first time. Voltaic Key, Tezzeret the Seeker. There's lots of ways to use Time Vault, but I'm thinking of ways that work within, Alpha Beta Unlimited, 1993, ways you could do it. And Paralyze, I think, does the job almost as well and still does the job like Instill Energy. It's just the wording on it in Alpha Beta Unlimited didn't make that clear. It wasn't until Revised came out, and it was at the start of your upkeep, pay 4 to untap it right on the card, that became clear that yes, it would work with an animated Time Vault. Interestingly, a lot of these rule discussions and combos that people went nuts with came about with these animate cards. Animate Artifact, Animate Dead, both came up quite a bit in our early discussion here. And then the only one that didn't as much was Animate Wall. And I do remember people trying to throw that on Illusion and stuff, but interesting. And just showing me some Pokemon cards that are going up in price.
It jumped, yeah.
Who knows? We're going to have to reevaluate what our top 5 Pokemon cards are one of these days. My top 5 Magic cards are probably a little easier to detect because prices do change. Honestly, that was another thing that bugged me about Commander. When they first came out with Commander, they looked at the Power 9 and said, yeah, these would be fun, but they're just way too expensive. We don't want to be encouraging them. We'll leave the cheapest one in the format because, it affects all players, Time Twister, and so it's probably the most fun, and it's the cheapest, so it's the most accessible. So we'll leave that one in, but the other ones, nah, just on a cost basis. And what happened? Well, demand for Time Twister went through the roof. Its price went through the roof, and it's now no longer the cheapest of the Power 9, that's for sure. Where is it actually in the ranking of them? I'm not sure. It might be as high as the top 3. I'm not entirely certain of that. I'd have to check. But man, did Time Twister go up just because it was the only one allowed in Commander. That's the only reason. In any other sort of dueling formats and stuff that happened that were sort of 60 card format before, it was always acknowledged as the weakest of the Power 9, basically. And the price reflected that. I mean, maybe you could find something like a Mox Pearl or something, one of the less sought after Moxes that would be similar pricing, but yeah, I don't know. It was definitely one of those things where Commander has warped things in a few ways in terms of this game and in terms of the collecting market. So, c'est la vie. Anyway.
That's crazy. I still can't believe how much that's jumped in price.
Yeah.
That's
But I'm going to throw it out there just once more before we wrap things up for tonight, because we do have a lot of wrapping and other things to get done. We hope everyone has a very Merry Christmas. And we were glad to participate in the Secret Santa thing. That was a neat little
that was
Christmas
so much
activity.
fun. If you didn't get a chance to go see those videos.
But yeah, we're looking forward to celebrating. We've got more stuff planned for the new year once things get settled down again a bit. And
I will be going live on Thursday with Pokemon.
Yeah.
I just don't know what I'm doing yet.
Yeah, we'll find something to do on Thursday. And probably the kids will have stuff to do on Saturday as well for our usual streams for this week, basically.
We could open a box of the Terrestrial Festival.
We could. But
yeah, who knows what
I always like digging up my old cards. I prefer to play. So if anybody wants to challenge me, and like I said, usually what I'll do is I'll go through my binder.
Not tonight, though.
Not tonight. Yeah. It's too late now. But for a future night, let me know. And if you're willing to show up, and I'll give you first pick to build a 40-card deck out of my binder of Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, and Arabian Nights. Or maybe we could throw in Antiquities too, if you like. Build yourself a 40-card deck out of anything that's there. We'll limit it to 3 copies of a card, just because 40-card decks are small. And then I'll build a deck with whatever's left over. And we'll play. And maybe I'll even come up with some prizes. Who knows?
Oh, yeah.
But if you can beat me. And yeah, I'd like to do this more, but I'm not getting any challengers, so I need to go and maybe fish some out from some old friends list somewhere.
Yeah.
But I think it could be a lot of fun. We've tried it once.
Start going to,
it seemed to go all right.
To a local card shop or something.
And if we get up to 2,000 subscribers, I've got that collector booster special edition holiday box from Lord of the Rings from last year that is just itching to get opened and see what else I can find in there, because there's a lot of interesting cards in that set.
That's gonna be fun.
And
we're gonna have to savor every pack though. Like I mean, you don't want to rush through
stretch it out a little bit somehow, because
yeah,
it's only 12 packs in one of those boxes. I couldn't believe that when I saw collector boxes with only 12 packs. I mean, that's barely a box. And then I found out that some collector boxes only have 4 packs. That's boggles my mind. Why on earth would they make a box with only 4 packs in it? That that doesn't make any sense to me at all. And then they did it with Magic 30, which was a gong show on a whole nother level. But let's not get into that tonight. But yeah, 4 packs is not a box of packs. I'm sorry, it just isn't. I mean, no, 12 is bad enough.
I think we should. I know there's not a lot of people in, but if anybody is a Pokemon fan, I think we should go and bug Broly.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is not controversial. Oh, okay. Well, apparently it is to somebody, because they keep making stupid products. Anyways. This is, I'm far more cautious now with my Magic purchases than I used to be, and that's probably for the better.
Yeah, especially with me not being as cautious with my Pokemon.
Anyway, hope you liked our Blutzel. Come back and visit us sometime.
This way, I'm gonna put the Broly's links in. Broly's one of my favorite Pokemoners. He does rip and chips, but he's fun. I enjoy him. He's been one of our supporters. Like, he used to try and help get us build our channel up too. So I think we should
gotta build up that Blutzel.
We should definitely go and check him out if you get the chance. He's fun and he makes me smile. He's I don't know. There's lots of good things. I'm just too tired to say them all.
Yeah.
So here is the link to Broly's. You can head over there. You can say Spokat Raid.
And if you like classic Magic the Gathering cards, that's my bread and butter. That's what I love. And I like to share. I like to talk about it. And thanks for anyone who came and offered points in the conversation. And
Yeah.
I hope we can get into some games sometime soon.
Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. Hope you have a very Merry Christmas. Stay safe. Yeah, have a blast. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Hopefully.
Okay, bye for now.
Have a good night.
And please go check out Broly.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Oh, oh, oh.